Annie by MercuryCoatedVeins. Before Annie, my parents tried everything. Nightlights, sleep masks, children's cold medicine, even extensive and expensive therapy, but nothing ever came close to curing my fear of the dark. Each night, they would flip off the lights and leave me in a 10 by 10 space of my own personal hell, almost conditioned to wake up an hour or so later when I would scream like the world was ending. Even laying between them in their own bed didn't help. The night followed me into every room, and so did my fear. After one particularly bad night, in which I didn't sleep at all and passed out in the middle of my class the next day, my parents whittled their options down to one. It was desperate, but they needed to do something, for the sake of my health as well as their own peace of mind. It was my 5th birthday. My mum was in the kitchen preparing food for the party, while I sat on the floor in the living room, watching cartoons, sleepy-eyed from another restless night. At some point I heard my dad, who had gone out earlier under the pretense of getting more party supplies, open the front door. Then came the sound of something scraping and skittering across the front hall tiles. As I turned my head to see what was happening, a black and white blur dashed around the corner, skidded into the wall, and then promptly barreled me over, soaking my entire face with a long pink tongue. She was a border collie, fresh out of puppyhood and just as energetic. Her coat felt like clouds and her eyes sparkled a bright baby blue. Her right ear bore a semicircle scar, as if something had taken a bite out of it a long time ago. To this day, we still don't know how she got it. "What's her name?" I asked when I was finally able to push the excited animal off me. She sat calmly on my lap, weighing almost as much as I did, as if we'd been friends since birth. Her head was under my arm, her snout nuzzled under my chin. My dad smiled as he patted her. "Her name's Annie. She's going to be your new sister." I hugged her close and smiled into her warm, bushy fur, feeling tears of joy prickling in the corners of my eyes. "Annie Bear," I whispered. Her ears perked up at the sound of her name. That day went on to be one of the best birthdays that I could remember. Then, when everyone had gone, presents unwrapped, the cake eaten, and the stars blinking open in the sky, the dread returned full force. I lay still in my bed as my parents tucked me in, expecting another night of insomnia and terror. Then, Annie stepped into the room and immediately leapt onto the bed, curling herself tight against the back of my legs as if she belonged there. I gave my parents a questioning gaze. They looked at each other and smiled. "Well, she is your responsibility," said Mum. "I think she should sleep with you from now on. What do you say?" They kissed me goodnight before turning out the lights and leaving the room. For a moment I trembled on my side, eyes clenched shut against the darkness, fearing what I believed was there. Then I reached back and felt Annie's scarred ear, gently rubbing it and petting her head. She licked my fingers and snuggled more closely to me. Almost like magic, my tremors ceased, and I relaxed under the blankets. I slept like a baby for the first time in years. We quickly realised that taking care of a border collie required more effort than my parents had thought, evident by the scratched up carpet, the masticated pillows, and more than one yellow puddle on the kitchen floor. It didn't help that she was the canine equivalent of a genius and foiled most of our attempts to contain her without fail. She even figured out how to get the pantry open, leaving a mess of spilled dog food for us to find when we got home. I know my parents had felt the frustration keenly during those first few weeks, probably regretting the decision to get such a crafty, high-energetic pet, but they saw the smile the dog put on my face and they couldn't deny how much Annie was growing on them as well. So they soldiered on, working tirelessly to train her and find less destructive outlets for her hyperactive personality. My parents made sure that I had a big role in taking care of Annie. They included me in her clicker training, showed me how much food to put in her bowl each morning, and brought me along for her walks each day after school. At first, I whined and complained like any child would, especially when my dad forced me to pick up after Annie. But they were persistent. Annie was my baby sister now. They would remind me. And if I didn't take responsibility for her, she would go right back to the shelter. In the end, it was definitely for the better. All her leash pulling put some muscle on me. My confidence grew with teaching her how to heel and stay and leap over hurdles, and picking up poop didn't seem to disgust me nearly as much as I thought it would. Eventually I started walking her by myself, relishing in the feeling of independence it gave me, as well as alone time with my four-legged sister. Since that first night, curled on my bed, Annie proved to be very protective. Generally, she had a sociable nature and instantly loved anyone she met, human or animal. However, if she detected even the faintest bit of malice in someone, especially towards me, she would let everyone know about it. During one of our walks, when it was just Annie and me, a man was following us from the other side of the street. I didn't notice until we reached the crosswalk, and the man crossed to our side, stopping directly in front of me and asking something about directions or help finding something. I don't remember. In an instant, Annie had placed herself between us and crouched in that famous border collie herding position, giving him the eye and growling like I'd never heard her growl before. The man wasted no time in quickly walking away, trying to appear as if this little encounter hadn't happened. We didn't see him again after that. I never found out if he was a criminal or potential kidnapper, but I trusted Annie's instincts more than anything. If she thought he was no good, then he was definitely no good. Since then, I rarely left the house without my parents or Annie at my side. The 10 years I spent with Annie were some of the best of my life. She held our family together when things started to get dicey between my parents. She taught me to be patient, to be outgoing, to smile and laugh when I felt like crying and running away from everything. As a result, I excelled in school, made the track team, and gained lots of friends, some of which I'm still close to today. She even saw the short-lived arrival of my first girlfriend, comforting me when I lost her and helping me to move on like no bout of therapy could. The best part was that since getting Annie, my fear of the dark had completely subsided. As long as she slept in my bed each night, I wasn't afraid. Even into my teens, she still scouted the shadows under my bed and inside my closet, making sure I felt completely safe before I shut my eyes. Eventually, enough time passed that I couldn't even remember what had scared me so much in the first place. She was my protector, my living teddy bear, and my best friend. I couldn't possibly imagine life without her. She was 12 when we started noticing. Her once boundless energy had waned, her legs trembled and buckled when she walked through the house, and she spent more time sitting on the couch with her head in my lap, rather than playing outside. Her last agility competition had been a year ago, and she had only managed to scrape up a participation ribbon instead of the blue first placers from her youth. She couldn't even get up the stairs on her own anymore. She wasn't sick like most dogs. She didn't have cancer or some other incurable condition. She was simply getting old. The vets knew it, Mum and Dad knew it, and deep down, I knew it too. For the longest time I pretended not to know. No, I flat out refused to believe it. I was 15, stubborn and not yet introduced to the cruel reality of death. I told everyone, especially myself, that she was strong, that she still had many years left in her, that there was no way she was going to die now. She was going to stay my sweet little baby Annie bear forever. Nothing, not even her tired blue eyes or her limply wagging tail could convince me otherwise. I remember our last night together. I got ready for bed and went downstairs to get Annie. At this point I wasn't really afraid of the dark anymore, but I rarely slept without her, and she hated being alone downstairs. However, when I went to pick her up, she growled at me. It wasn't threatening, more like she was politely asking me to back off. Then, to my surprise, she began hauling herself up the stairs. Her legs shook, her chest heaved and dragged, and her paws landed with a heavy thump on each carpeted step. But she climbed on like a champion. I tried to help her along multiple times, but she just growled and even snapped at me until I let her do it on her own. When she reached the landing, a few minutes later, she plopped down on the floor, panting in long, wheezing gasps. I knelt down and patted her head, rubbing the scarred half circle on her ear. "Good girl, Annie," I said in a soft voice. That's my strong baby Annie Bear. She gazed up at me with those watery blue eyes and lazily licked my hand. She finally let me pick her up and carry her to my room. I couldn't help but remember the day we met, when she'd barreled me over and snuggled up to me like we'd known each other for years. She'd been so big then compared to me. Now, holding her in my arms, she barely weighed anything. I set her on my bed and slept under the covers, smiling as I felt her carefully shift against the backs of my legs. I fell asleep with a smile on my face. In the morning, my parents woke up to the sound of me screaming, for the first time in years, for reasons that had nothing to do with the dark. After we brought Annie to the vet, Mum said that she would take the day off of work and stay home with Dad and me. There was a lot of hugging, a lot of crying, and a lot of silence. I called one of my closest friends and just cried over the phone with her for a while. I skipped breakfast, barely managed to get down lunch, and threw everything up around dinner. I felt too many things, and I felt nothing at all. She's just a dog, my brain was telling me. Yeah, but she was my dog. She was my best friend in the whole wide world, and I couldn't comprehend living in a world where she wasn't in it with me. That night, I climbed the stairs and walked towards my bedroom without any furry bundle of joy in my arms. My eyes were red and my cheeks were still tacky with tear lines. I was thinking about how she had climbed up all by herself, how she had given that one final push just to spend her last night with me. I didn't even bother to turn on the light as I stepped inside, closed the door, and stumbled over to my bed. However, as I creaked onto the old mattress and pulled the sheets over my legs, my numb mind finally registered the darkness. Thick, bleak, and far too quiet. It was like someone had slammed down on the big red emergency button in my brain. A button that had been untouched and collecting dust since I was 5. I suddenly remembered exactly why I had been so afraid of the dark when I was a child. They must have known I was alone. That my one source of protection was finally gone, because all at once the darkness began to move. It rippled and shook like heat rising off of sun-baked asphalt, collecting, gaining mass and shape and solidity in the spaces under my furniture and between the gap in my closet doors. As my eyes adjusted, I could see just what those shapes were. Dark appendages, wings, talons, tails, stretched and smiling faces that belonged to neither humans nor beasts. They crawled from the slats of my window blinds, from the pile of dirty laundry in the corner, even from the dusty wings of my ceiling fan. They appeared, dozens of them, maybe hundreds, creatures of every shape imaginable, some unimaginable, a few impossible. With gnashing teeth, rotten claws, and a collective, desperate hunger, they crept slowly towards my bed. I couldn't breathe or think. Surely this wasn't real, surely this wasn't happening. There wasn't anything in the dark. I had just imagined it all as a kid, because that's what we did when we were young and stupid and didn't know what the real world was like. We just had a bad dream, we imagined it. We saw monsters where there was nothing but empty, lightless air. So why did I get the overwhelming feeling that I was seeing far more than just empty, lightless air? I could hear them now, an amalgamation of the worst sounds imaginable. Choking gurgles, laboured breaths, insectile chitters, deep violent snarls and laughter. So much laughter, quiet and sinister and containing all the excitement of a serial killer about to fillet his latest victim. Sometimes I could even make out words. "We missed you, sweetheart. I don't know how long we've waited for this. No mongrel to protect you now. Skin, please, let us have your skin." I could smell them too. Strange, unexpected smells that did not so much repulse me as they struck a myriad of terrible memories from deep within my soul. Bubblegum from when I ran across the playground and fell on the concrete, scraping my leg from knee to ankle. sweaty fabric when I peed my pants on stage at the Christmas play, sobbing as the audience laughed relentlessly. Burnt meatloaf when my parents got into an awful fight one day. Throwing out the D word for the first time, but not the last time in my life. I was breathing every bad memory I could remember, choking on them, while the fiends in the dark moved closer and closer.
Such lean, tender muscles. Her tongue. I want her tongue. How loud will she scream, I wonder? There's no one to save you this time, child.
Then, the first few hands reached out and touched my arms, gripping them with gradually tightening fingers, sandpaper scales, oozing flesh, even simple human skin. This wasn't my imagination, this wasn't just a dream, this was real. I finally let out a scream, one far louder than any I'd ever made in my life. Then I heard it, and I wondered if I was dreaming after all, because I couldn't have been hearing what I was hearing. Somewhere in the thick, writhing, monster-filled darkness, something was barking. The dark figure suddenly let me go, cringing away and crying out as something burst through their ranks. It was smaller than most of them, quick on its feet and absolutely tearing into them, one by one, with a mouthful of jagged black teeth. They ripped apart with astonishing ease, pieces of their bodies flying around like cotton from a couch cushion. A few tried to attack it back, but it was no use. It tore them apart as effortlessly as if they were made of newspaper. I watched it destroy nearly half a dozen shadowy fiends in less than 10 seconds. It was in the face of this new danger the rest of them filed back into the darker shadows, disappearing as fast as they could beneath the bed and behind the dresser. Finally, when all the monsters were gone, the attacking shadows stopped and stood at the foot of my bed, just visible in the now motionless darkness. It panted heavily, but it still seemed ready to go. Its legs sprightly, its body taut and energetic, like it dared anything else to come out and try to hurt me. I stared at it for I'm not sure how long, mouth agape, mind a whirlwind of hysterical thoughts. I didn't even hear the sound of my parents' pounding footsteps until they threw the door open. Light flooded in from the hallway, and for 1 second I thought I saw a familiar black and white shape where the dark figure once stood. Then, as my parents rushed in and asked me what was wrong, I saw nothing but empty air. Had a bad dream, I told them. They stayed with me for a bit because I started crying and couldn't stop. They hugged me, kissed me, and whispered that everything was going to be alright. I wanted to tell them that I believed them. I wanted to tell them what I had seen. I wanted to tell them a lot of things in that moment, but I couldn't speak. I could only cry. By the time I had quieted down, I didn't have the energy to say anything. Without another word, they tucked me in, kissed my forehead and closed the door, leaving me in that quiet, black void. I thought for sure the nightmarish things would come back. I thought for sure I would see and hear and smell all those awful things again, this time with no escape. But I was wrong. I never saw them again after that night. Even 20 years later, I haven't so much as glimpsed one of those hideous things in the shadows of my room. My own kids don't even complain about monsters in the dark. Now every night before I go to sleep, I listen for a familiar panting as something pads across the carpet towards my bed. I wait until something jumps lithely onto the mattress, and I feel a familiar warm, bushy shape curl herself into the backs of my legs. Then I pull my hand out from under my sheets and hold it back, wriggling my fingers. I still cry sometimes when I feel that semicircle of missing ear and a big, warm tongue licking my hand. "Good night, Annie Bear," I say. Every time, I swear, I hear a little whine from my beloved, four-legged sister.